Hey and welcome back, lovely people. Wallace. Oh, no, it's Corbett. Hey and welcome back, lovely people. You might notice that the wall is gone. Dorothy needed to move her large printing press to her new studio, and so the only way to do it was to actually move the wall. That looks like a goat as well. So welcome back. And this is really interesting. Remember, I did a series of films on Machrihanish, Britain's Area 51. I lived in that area of Scotland growing up, and it was well known for sightings of strange craft. It was a diversion airfield for transatlantic airliners or space shuttle in distress, and there's other strange goings on in the area. My father was associated with the base, and he definitely claimed that nuclear weapons were there, and there was a bunch of mysterious Americans. Years later, he was proved to be right. The Americans who were there were a SEAL team who placed nuclear depth charges, and there was a nuclear store on the base. My father also claimed that the A83, the main road from Campbelltown up to Glasgow, was in fact a cruise missile designated dispersal route. And again, he was correct. New evidence has shown that it had special military status, and millions were spent on taking out bends in the road and removing rocks so large vehicles could transit carrying big nasty stuff up and down the road. So a lot of it is actually true, but the main thing that's happened is that school friends and people who watch the films keep on getting in touch with me. One person found one of these nuclear bunkers hidden near the road, possibly. Another person sent me these. These are secret pictures taken inside the US SEALs base after they'd left, but you can clearly see their rec room, their dorms, and some possibly underground facilities and a firing range. But the mystery deepens. I got this great letter from somebody who was based at this place. Now, this is a NATO camouflaged semi-underground fuel depot with a jetty. And I claimed we found a pipeline from the underground fuel dump to the Air Force base, and mysteriously strange exotic fuels came and were loaded at the base and were pumped to this big hangar, possibly to refuel exotic aircraft at Machrihanish. This person wrote and said, I work at the base, and one of our duties is to have a nuclear awareness box where we had thousands of iodine tablets in case of a nuclear accident. And I thought, well, that doesn't really make much sense, but now it does. And this is pretty secret stuff, but I really don't mind sharing it with you. The Navy have designated areas that they can dock. If they call the port X, like Faslane, it's a place where nuclear submarines can be refurbished, their reactors worked on, and their missiles reloaded. But then there's a designation Jetty Z or Zulu, and Campbelltown was a Zulu base. What does that mean? Zulu bases, and there's only half a dozen of them in the United Kingdom, were safe harbors in case of a problem for a nuclear-powered vessel, mainly submarines, I'm guessing, to dock at, and they could have support and a way of tackling a major problem. So thanks, guys. Right across from where I grew up and my parents' house was a Zulu category docking station. This is a picture of the area, so that makes sense of his iodine pills. And that lets me get on to the main purpose of this film. And it's not about flying saucers. It's not about the Aurora project. It's about something else, something that touches all of our lives that took place right next door to Britain's Area 51, Machrihanish. And that's this place. And this is exactly how I remember it. Large chunks of concrete buried in base rock right next to the Air Force Base. And I used to, as a child, climb over them and always wonder what they were. And I was told that they were something to do with Marconi and radio transmission. Well, that's not quite the full story. They're in fact a transmitter made by Reginald Fessenden. I really hadn't heard of Reg, but Reg has an immense claim to fame that we use every day, or at least we used to. And he invented amplitude modulation. Oh yeah, well, what's that? Well, it's really interesting. We all remember, and the name that we bandy around is Marconi invented radio, but Marconi got it wrong. Marconi thought you could transmit a signal using a spark gap generator, and it was just a burst of crackle which emanated out into the airwaves. And if you had a receiver sympathetically tuned to the size of the crackle, it went ding, and it was one way. It only could send one message at a time, and it was only useful for Morse code. You could send crackles over the airways because Marconi believed that you needed to excite the airwaves with radio frequency, and it would travel over and be picked up. Fessenden, a Canadian, thought of a much better model or picture of how RF waves disseminate. And he imagined throwing multiple rocks into a pond. The ripples travel out, you throw another one and there's another ripple. So you set up a wave or carrier wave. And he thought that if you could set up a carrier wave all the time between a transmitter and a receiver, you would establish a continuous link. He then brilliantly superimposed on this carrier wave a modulated frequency, say voice or music, and so AM or amplitude modulated. So imagine a carrier wave, but your radio filters out the and then you talk into it and the wave modulates, it goes up and down, and your radio just sees the bits that go up and down and turns it into talk radio or AM. And that's what Reginald did at Machrihanish. He had built 2 towers, one just north of Boston in the US and one in Machrihanish in Argyll. And he was the first person to send AM amplitude modulated signal radio waves across the Atlantic. The story goes that he sent voice communication. We think that he wanted to, and in fact he invented voice communication on the radio. But unfortunately, I don't think he did, because his tower at Machrihanish blew down in a gale, and it turned out that one of the contractors hadn't actually built it properly. And when it fell down, it was never rebuilt. So he only used it for a few months testing, and we think only Morse code messages were sent. But that tower, and this is what's left of it, was the basis of AM radio, thanks to Scotland, Reginald, and one of Britain's most secret areas, Machrihanish. The truth is out there.